Good evening, Professor. My name is Dustin Murphy, and I'm in your American History class. I been presented a question by you that is asked us to find a historical person, if you will, that has played an important part in forming what we see today in our nation. So what I did to find someone is I looked at some different words, keywords such as change, foundation, things like that. Whenever you bring that up, a lot of people automatically point to presidents, founding fathers, all these huge names, and all the little names were overlooked. And so with this, I looked at some of those little names. So a lot of these little names brought up rebellions. And when I thought about it, I was like, why rebellion? Well, that's when the light bulb went off and I realized rebellions were a huge part of basically being the glue to this country. If the government just came in right from Britain and ran it the way they wanted to, we would have looked at another tyranny here in America. So for that, I look at right after the Revolutionary War, right after we gained that independence from Britain. It put us in another debt. So what did our government do? Raise taxes. And it's like the number one go-to in that time. Well, with these taxes brought problems, of course. The majority of the citizens were farmers. Well, a lot of farmers lost all of their money because trade was shut down. And so, no money coming in, well, they can't pay taxes. So what did the government do? They brought them into court cases and fined them, and some of them lost their land. Well, one person in particular also got called into the court, and his name was Daniel Shea. Now, Daniel Shea was a veteran. He was a veteran in the Revolutionary War, and he's just a normal farmer, your common man. A man willing to stand up, a man willing to say enough when things became unfair, a man that gained the respect of those around him and ended up leading a revolt, a rebellion, against this local government, which ended up shaking the entire nation and opening the eyes of the government. During this time, people viewed it as another way of our government becoming a tyranny. Only gold and silver were accepted. You really didn't have a choice of paying or not. You're basically in chains. So what did Daniel Shea do? He broke those chains. Yes, his battle ended on a snowy field because the central government and the local government, their little tiny armies started firing cannons at them. Daniel Shea noticed that his people were getting killed, so he basically called it off, and the fighting subsided. But something was left. That something created change. That something brought a whole new view, and yet created what we see today. The government's eyes were closed this whole time to what kind of economic crisis that they were creating because all they wanted to do was raise taxes. That's what they thought would bring them money. Well, what Daniel Shea brought was openness to the fact that we were in an economic crisis, pointing back to what the Revolutionary War brought us from. So, that being said, his rebellion, being one of the most famous rebellions in our history textbooks, brought that. So today, even today, you look at the taxes. They're being imposed, they're being raised from day to day, but you never see anything that looks like a tyranny. But then it also brings up another question. With taxes being raised, with starvation being out there, with homeless people not having homes anymore and not even getting any help, that brings up the question, who will be the next Daniel Shea? The people look at Daniel today and see him as a hero. I know I do. He was a common man willing to stand up for those around him, for the ones that he loved, for the ones that he cared, for the great country that he cares about. A quote that I saw while researching was by Thomas Jefferson, and it reads, and I quote, "A little rebellion now and then is a good thing. It is a medicine necessary for the sound health of government. God forbid that we should ever be 20 years without such a rebellion." I look at that and I totally agree. Which again I ask, with all these issues raising, who's going to be the next Daniel Shea?